Alright guys, so let's check out making a 3D scene inside of After Effects. First thing that we're going to do is just start with a new project, and inside of After Effects I'm going to go to the bottom here and click on this little icon right here, right, to create a new composition. And when that bad boy opens up, we can just call it what it is, maybe 3D scene. Just since we're exploring a 3D scene, we'll leave everything else as a default. 1920 by 1080 is pretty good, so I'll hit OK. And the first thing you're going to notice is I was kind of playing with some of the stuff to mess with it. So I'll just drop this down, go to one view. This is generally what we're going to be inside of After Effects when you first open it up. Okay, this is a 3D scene. I have it in a one view by default, and I have an active camera, but we're going to change that here in 1 minute. Okay, one thing that I do have set is that I have this set to a quarter view, and this is going to be our resolution. Okay, so when your computer is giving you a display up here, it's really displaying some hardcore processing when it comes to your graphics card and your chip, your CPU and all that good stuff that has to process anything like mental ray or anything to kind of give you an idea of what your final product is going to look like when you do render it out. So full is going to be full HD and what your project will look like. Half is going to be half that resolution, a third of that resolution, a quarter is a quarter of that resolution, or a customized one that you would like to create on your own, okay? If we go down to a quarter, it's going to help us to basically work with this and be able to move a little more quickly than full would be, because full is going to have a higher processing power onto your computer, which is going to bog it down a little bit when you have a lot of things in your scene. So I have a 3D scene here, just very basic. I have no layers just yet. I'm going to make something super basic like text, okay? So I'm going to come up here and click on the text tool. I'm going to come over here and click once. I'll type in front. I don't really care about the font, but I'll hit the enter on the numeric keypad. And that's going to help me to just kind of say that I'm done typing. Remember, if you hit enter near the keys on the keyboard, like the keys that you use to type out letters, that will just drop it down one slot, okay? So I hit enter on the numeric keypad, and I have text in here. The text is just plain old 2D text, if you will. Very simple, nothing crazy. I'll just kind of move this towards the middle here, okay? I have that going on here, and that is just basic text. What I can do is I want to make it into more of a 3D scene, so it doesn't look so horrid. I'll just kind of drop this down and go to half, okay? And that's what you guys will see from there to full to half to quarter. It'll get more pixelated because it's really cutting away. Come up here to the very top, and I have some of my options that I'll be using. Right now, I'm in this tool right here, and the tool being the selection tool, which is V on your hotkeys. And if I come over here to this guy, this is going to be the unified camera tool. I'm going to hold down my left mouse button, and I have other camera tools inside of here. Like the unified camera tool is going to be made up of all the tools below it. The orbit camera tool to, kind of tumble your camera. The track camera tool to track the camera. And the track Z camera tool, which is really a dolly in, dolly out. Okay. The unified camera is made up of all of these, all into one. I like the unified camera because it allows us to use the left mouse button, the right mouse button, and the middle mouse button. Okay. In order to activate this, I need to create a camera, but I also need this to be a 3D scene. So I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and to activate the text as a 3D object, I'll come over here to where this little box is. Okay. Anything with this little box activated will become a 3D scene. I will go to the top now, and I can mess with some of the cameras in here, but I'm going to prefer to make my own camera, okay? So I'll go to the top under layers, down to new, and I'm gonna go over to my camera. So I'll click on camera. I prefer to usually call this shot cam, and that's gonna be like one of the ones that you would render out. And you guys will see that that's one of the things they would do back in the day, and they still do today, as creating a shot cam that's going to be rendered out. Okay, so you guys will have like different cameras for different scenes, and whatever your naming convention will be is going to be either given to you or you'll have to come up with your own to stay organized. Okay, by default, usually this is turned off, the enable depth of field, but I like it on because I like to be able to use depth of field. Okay, so I'm going to turn that on, and I'll hit OK. Oh, another thing that is real basic here is that my film size is set to 36 millimeter. Okay, I'm not too worried about that. I could change that to 50 millimeter, because the preset right here is 50 millimeter, but the film size is 36 millimeter film. And you guys see that I have other presets like 20 millimeter, 35 millimeter. These two are really popular, 35 and 50 millimeter. But you also have 80, 135, and 200 millimeter. Okay, or you can do a custom. So I'll leave it to 50 millimeter. That's pretty standard. And the look that we'll get is going to be really up to us. Okay, so we'll play with some of these settings. We don't have to change them right now to commit to them. We can basically work with them as we go. So I'll hit OK, and I'll have all those settings down here under my shot cam. So now that I have a shot cam, I can actually use that as my 3D camera. So I'll come over here to the side, and one of the things I like to do is I have an active camera that is the default camera for After Effects, but I'll drop this guy down, and this is my views, okay? So I'm in the first view, I could do like two views, which is going to split up this composition area, like giving me a preview, like split in half, vertically or horizontally. But I like to go to four views right away. And four views are not going to be the left, right, top, and bottom, but it will be the side, top, and front. Okay, and then the fourth one will be whatever I designate it to be. Okay, so I'll click on four views, and generally the active camera is the camera that is in this little box here. So I get to choose which one is going to be that little quadrant, if you will, of a camera right there. But you'll see that I have the front camera right here, I have the top camera, and I have the right camera, okay, which is going to be the side, just like we were doing inside of Maya for my Maya people, or how we just kind of barely touched base on Maya last week. So I will change this though. I don't want it to be my active camera. I want to see what's going to come out of my shot camera. So I'll click on that with my left mouse button. It's going to load it up. And now I have a shot camera right here. Okay. Since I have this unified camera tool, that's the first one right here. Okay. So hold down my left mouse button on the camera, or just click it once really, and it's going to be in that unified camera tool. Okay. When I have that, I can come over here, and this, again, this layer has to be in 3D, because watch, if I don't have it in 3D, I can move my camera, and I'm clicking and dragging, and it's saying that it's not going to affect a 2D layer, so I'd have to turn it into a 3D layer. So I hit OK. I'll come down here, turn it into a 3D layer, and now I can use my camera. Okay. If you add any other layers, I'll just click and drag this to my left mouse button. If you add any other layers, text layers, whatever, and you do not activate them like this, I'll just create another one to show you. Text layer, and I'll click in my front view right here, and I'll say mid. I'll hit enter on my numeric keypad. It's always going to stay there. So a 2D layer would stay where it is, always going to face the camera. If I take my camera tool and I am moving my 3D camera, nothing's going to happen to that mid, okay, until I come down here and turn that layer into a 3D layer. So I have to activate it as a 3D layer, and you'll see that it will jump into place because none of the objects here are moving, it's the camera that's moving. Okay. So the camera movement is left mouse button to tumble the camera. I'll release that. I'll hold down my middle mouse button, and now I can track the camera up, down, left, and right. And I'll release that, and I'll hold down the right mouse button, and that lets me dolly in and dolly out. Okay. A lot like in Maya, except we don't have to hold down the Alt key. The cool thing about this is that if I do hold down the Alt key as a modifier key, and I come up here and I hold down my left mouse button or something, it will give me these templates, okay? So these templates are really just allowing me to see what the objects are going to do by rotation or dollying in or dollying out or tumbling or whatever. And they move a lot more quickly than a bunch of graphics and 3D objects, especially objects that are going to be using mental ray or something like that that's going to be very hard on your CPU and your graphics card. So I can get that to go into position and a lot more quickly than I would be able just to click and drag like this. Okay. And here it's not really mattering too much because my scene's not crazy, but I'm going to come up here to my selection tool, click on my selection tool, and you see that I have these right here. Let me kind of zoom in a little bit here. And I'll just use my middle mouse button, scroll wheel to do that in this case. But I do have these axes, okay? With the layer selected, I have the mid layer selected right now, and by default, it's going to show me these axes, which is pretty cool because I can rotate from these axes, I can, scale and move these objects. If I hover over this guy, it's telling me that I will be moving this in the Z axis or the Z axis. I can click and drag it forward, and it's moving it forward in 3D space, or I can drag it back. So I have the front in the front, the mid in the mid, and then the back would be in the back. Okay. I have my different views. So this is my shot cam. This is my top view. Kind of scroll back, and you're seeing right here, this is the camera, okay, at the angle that I've rotated at and all that good stuff. So the camera's right here. In the front view, you can see the camera, and in the right view, you can see the camera. And again, I'm just using my middle mouse wheel to scroll in and out as a zooming effect, if you will, for my composition as a canvas, if you will. Okay, I could also use the spacebar, hold spacebar, and kind of reposition my composition like a canvas or a piece of paper if you were drawing, if everything is not fitting in here. Because you'll see that the camera appears to be way outside of our work area. This is just giving us an idea of how far it is away from certain things. All right. From the top view, the kind of cool thing is I can come in here and I'll just kind of do something like that. And I'll hold down the space bar, click and drag. Maybe I better, zoom out a little bit. So I'll just scroll out with my middle mouse wheel, hold the space bar, and you'll see that my mid text selected is this guy right here. If I click on the front layer, that's this one right here. Okay, nothing bad, nothing crazy, but this is going pretty well. So what I can do is I could even click on those layers and I can move them here. So I can move this guy forward, the front one forward. Okay, hold down space bar, click and drag with my left mouse button to reposition my canvas. Drag that forward like that. And then I'll go ahead and I can do this type of stuff, like I can click on the mid layer and move it. And in this scene, it's not bad because I really don't have a whole lot of things inside of here. But you're going to see that once I get a ton of different things in here, you're going to want to be careful what you select. So you might want to come down here and select your layers, lock layers when you're not wanting them to move or do anything, and all that good stuff. Okay, but right now we have a really basic scene and we can actually have the luxury of clicking on things in these different views. So there's the front, mid. If I had my camera in here where I could see it, which I'm actually, in my camera. So um, if I could see it kind of like the right view, I'd be able to click on my camera and I'd be able to move my camera around in my right view, my top view, and my front view. And that would allow me to move it there and position it. Okay. You're going to see that the camera is looking at the text that I've created, and we do have a bunch of different camera settings. Okay, so you can play with some of those settings here in one sec. One of the settings that you do see just right out in the front is this little crosshair looking thing. Okay, that is our point of interest. So I'm just going to come to my camera layer where it says shot cam. I'm going to drop it down like that. And I have the camera options. So I've zoomed, depth of field, focus distance, aperture, all these things I can play with here in a minute. Under my transforms, I have the point of interest. That's this little guy right here. And you're going to see if I click and drag it, it's going to show me where my camera is focusing basically. Okay. What is going to be the point of interest that my camera will stare at. So if I kind of come in here and I say, well, I probably should position it on the middle one. So the middle text right there, it's going to be following the middle text. So you can see that. If I update it, I'll just click and drag it to the front text now. The front text is now going to be the point of interest, and you see that that's kind of the center of my screen here. Okay, so whichever one you choose is going to be where the camera's point of interest is. When you zoom in and zoom out and such, it's going to be focusing on that. Okay, so there's that whole effect there. If I come here and I take the camera and I click the y-axis and I drag it down, I'm moving the entire camera. Okay, so I can move the camera down. I can take the x-axis and move it to the left. So it's almost in more of a front position. And then I'll take that point of interest. I can either move it down here by clicking and dragging things, okay, or I could just click the little icon here and drag it to position it at the text. So it's kind of at the front, and I can pull it over to the mid, and now it's going to focus based off of that camera angle to that mid. Okay, so that's a beautiful thing here, and it's going to be very simple for us to work with. Okay, so that's the basics for that part. And then we could do whatever we want with our text, like align it and all that good stuff. So one of the things that we can mess with a little bit is going to be the camera and the different other parts of it. Okay, so the point of interest we can move from here, or this little icon here. The position, up, down, left, and right. So X axis is always first. This is the way it works with like Maya and stuff as well. This first one is X, so left and right. I click and drag. Then there's the comma. Click and drag. This would be up and down, so Y. That's the Y axis. You'll see how it updates. Okay, and my point of interest is staying where I need it to be when I'm using these settings over here, okay, position wise. And then this is going to be the Z axis, so I can move it closer or further away. And you can see that in my right axis in my top view, kind of giving me an idea that it's getting closer, the camera is, okay? So I can do that from here. If I hold shift as a modifier key, I'll do it on the Y axis. You'll see it's a little more intense. So let me kind of dolly out of here. And I'll just kind of come over here, hold down shift, click and drag, and it's going to go in higher increments, okay? I believe it's supposed to go in like increments of 10, but it looks like this one's jumping in higher increments than that. But you'll see that my camera can go up and down very easily, opposed to smaller settings. So if I release that shift button as a modifier key, I can drag this and it's going in a lot smaller settings, okay? So that's my camera movement. I can move it like that. I can move it inside of here. So either position right here or position in any one of these, okay? And you guys will see that your shot cam, I'll hold down spacebar to get this little hand to move it back. But your shot cam here is going to give you the preview of what's going on here. So if you're animating this camera to go forward, for instance, this is what's happening, right? My text isn't aligned very crazily, so I'll come over here where my cursor is and I'll go to this green arrow and I'll click the arrow and drag upward now. You're going to see that I do get perspective because the camera has true 3D depth, or at least the calculations of them in After Effects. Okay, so this is kind of like our Maya scene, and I also do have the left and right deal, so you guys can see that if we animate the camera, we do get that parallax because the parallax is in fact happening in this case. Okay, so if you guys remember from the very beginning when we started studying parallax, this is another way that you guys can get that across. Okay, very awesome, very simple, and it's kind of a pretty scene. So I will take this and the rotations, you can be careful with this a little bit, but the rotations, I have them down here, so I could do a rotation in the different axes. So like Z, for instance, I could rotate, and it's going to rotate my camera in the Z axis, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I can do that in Z and in X and in Y. So that's Y, and here's X. So X is a little drastic, but not too bad. Okay, I'll just undo that. So Control Z is all I'm really doing, guys, when you see me just go back to 0. And I would test these values because this can kind of be tricky when you're messing with it. But I could also use a tool up here, this guy right here, okay? The rotation tool, W for rotate, which is very awesome, right? W for rotate, that's rich. So I get the rotate tool here and I'll come over here to the Y axis, click and start dragging and orient towards this point of interest. Oh yeah, so it will rotate the layer as a whole and it's going to cause it to move the point of interest if I do it this way, which is, is going to happen if you're going to be rotating cameras and such, but you could always update your point of interest. Again, I just want to show you that that would work. So I'll just hover over the Z and you see that I get a little Z here. It may be hard to see on your screens, but I'm going to click and drag that with my left mouse button. I'll click and drag the Z axis with the rotate tool. And remember the hotkey for rotate tool in After Effects is W, W for rotate. Okay. You could straight up go Elmer Fudd if you want, rotate it, right? So that would work, and hopefully you're laughing on the inside for that last joke there. And I'll hit Control Z to undo that, but I just want to show you that you can do that. And that's just my transforms, okay? Play with those a bit, get comfortable with them because they are tricky. And I'm gonna go down, yeah, I'll just kind of go down to my camera options here. For my camera options, I may have to change this to full, but let me see here. I'm gonna select my selection tool, and that's how I can actually move the camera. Okay, so you can move this away a little bit, and yeah, it must have been getting a little too close to that front text there. But what I'll do is instead of half, I'll do like maybe full, and that might be kind of hard on the system, but I mean, I guess that's okay there. And this is also because I do have, like depth of field and all that stuff going on here. So let me kind of position the camera from like a little bit more of an angle. And this point of interest, I'll just pull it to the mid text here. And I'm gonna double check that here. So hold down spacebar, click and drag. And again, I'm just trying to get comfortable with all my different views. Another thing that I could do is I could select the front text and I could move it over a little bit so that we're seeing the front and being able to compare it with the mid, kind of like that. Okay. Now they are a little further away from each other, each one of them. So what I could do is I'll take the mid and I'll pull it back a little bit more like this, the mid text. Okay. And I'm going to make one more text. So I'll come up here and click on the text tool, come over here, and I'll just kind of click on my front view somewhere near the other two. And I'm going to call it back. And I'll hit enter on my numeric keypad on the very right. Okay, I have to activate it as a 3D layer. It will update. Okay, and once I get an update, it's going to be pretty sweet because I'll be able to place it. So I'll select my selection tool, and now I have a back text. Okay, and the back text you'll see is in front of the mid text right here in my side view. So what I can do is I'll take this and drag it way far back. And again, it's not too crazy. I could go farther than this, but I'm just kind of making a bit of an extreme for you guys as an example. Okay, so nothing super crazy, nothing super weird. Again, all this stuff takes getting used to, but they do have a distance between each other, which is great because now, take this camera here, drag it back, and I can see all of them. Okay, the front, the mid, and the back. So here under the camera options of the shot camera, I have the depth of field, which is turned on. I have the aperture and the focus distance. Okay, so the focus distance is kind of far, but let me go down a bit here. So I'll take the focus distance and I can make it very close. Okay, and I can play with all this other stuff here as well. The main thing is going to be the focus distance and the aperture. So there's the zoom. Let's take the focus distance down. And you guys are going to see as I drag that, there is the focus distance, sorry, as a kind of like square-like shape in my camera, and it's really kind of cutting back. Okay, and what you're seeing is the focus distance changing to something that's going to be a little bit more close. Okay, and you're seeing that based off the focused distance, then I'm getting a type of depth of field now. And the depth of field is saying that, okay, from here around this area, things can be clear or clearish. Everything after that gets a little bit blurry. Everything after that gets a little bit more blurry, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now we have this really sweet depth of field going on here. So the tutorial is getting kind of long. I'm going to stop it at this point and create another one to post. Okay? So when we come back, we're going to kind of mess with a little bit more of a 3D scene. Again, I would play with this. We're going to make a ground and we're going to add a light so that you guys can see that we can start creating some 3D stuff. And then we can explore it maybe a little bit more in the next class or as part of your homework. Okay? So when we come back, we're going to mess with some of this and make a scene out of it.